Welcome, EUSD families and staff. I'm Andre Gray, Superintendent of Encinitas Union School District, and with me today is Assistant Superintendent Dr. Amy Illingworth. We're going to be sharing some information about our September reopening plans with you today, so thank you for tuning in. Let me start by saying a thank you and appreciation again. We have our theme this year as Embrace the Journey, and we selected that just because we knew right from the get-go that this year was going to be quite the year of changes and a windy road, so to speak. And that is certainly proving to be the case as we've finished our first week of distance learning. We're now into our second week, and we are looking ahead to the next turn, which is to return to school with some of our students in a hybrid model. And we want to recognize and appreciate all of the efforts that are going to go into this next phase of our reopening. We continue to put this slide up every time we talk because it is truly the most important thing we can be doing right now, which is prioritizing that our students and staff can confidently return to a safe work environment and one that's conducive for learning. We know that our students do best when they have in-person instruction, when they have a personal connection with their fellow peers, and we have been committed to making that happen when it's safe to do so. And so this next part of our reopening plan will begin to allow our students to return safely. So right from the beginning, we've been preparing and planning for everything. The first time I used this slide back in April and May, we were just beginning to think about our recovery efforts and our reentry plans. And at that time, we knew we had to plan a variety of different models, a variety of different scenarios, knowing that we were not sure where the pandemic needs would be. And so we engaged in a long-term process of planning for absolutely everything. And believe it or not, we may be using everything in our tool belt this year as new changes have come into play. So just a reiteration of our timeline from before, we started in March with the closures. In April, we had our second phase of distance learning. And then in May, we really began the reentry and recovery planning. And we entered with our committees at that time and started to kind of flesh out what all of the different plans could look like and creating some details that would help us as we move forward. And then, of course, our intent back then and actually happened was to return on August 17th to school, and in one of the plan scenarios based on public health guidelines. And the plan scenario, of course, ended up being distance learning because that was in line with public health orders at the time. So the three examples of our planning that we've had in place, we've been in distance learning because the public health orders have prohibited in-person learning for K-12 districts that were on the California State monitoring list. And now as we look to the next step, we are moving towards a hybrid model. And the reason for that is several reasons, is because now that in-person instruction will be permitted as of September 1st, and knowing that our priority has been to bring our students and staff back as safely and as soon as possible, we know that a hybrid model will allow us the physical distancing that's required. And the most important thing about why a hybrid model would be appropriate at this time is because of the physical distancing, but also because it will allow us to have less students and do a gradual return to school. We'll be talking a little bit more about that in the next coming slides. And I still want to have the slide up about a full return because we know our ideal for everyone is to be at a place in our community and our county and in our country where schools can reopen to full attendance with the proper precautions. That's where our love and our best work is done, and we're going to continue to strive to get there when it's safe to do so. So reminding everyone of how we make these decisions, it is really important to always note that these decisions are not made alone, and really with the expert advice and the guidance that's given to us. Everything from when we reopen to how we reopen is reviewed by a number of entities We've obviously followed the California executive orders, which were the monitoring list and allowing us to be off the monitoring list coming up based on the numbers, looking at the San Diego County assumptions that are involved, working with the Center for Disease Control guidelines that has very specific guidelines, including the importance of bringing students back when case rates are low, public health recommendations and current orders, and we did just on August 22nd had a change in our current public health orders that will allow us to bring students back in person in September. And then obviously, I continue to work very collaboratively and closely with our other districts and really specifically with our local feeder districts. And I do think it's important to note that the middle school and high school scenarios are certainly so different than an elementary setting where we can really have smaller numbers in a hybrid and really be able to bring students back in a safe way that we can have compliance for the safety protocols that are in place with certainly a lot less numbers than a high school or middle school. We did have our reentry committees do the bulk of this planning. As you can recall from our previous presentations, we had staff involved, we had parents involved, we had administrators, really to think through all of the necessary things that would be coming our way. And that continues to be so important. That work that was done by the committees is the backbone for our decisions that we've made because we knew those were made with all of the committee input and helped us really think through all of the perspectives that would be important to planning the next phase of reopening. I wanted to share some reminders. We reviewed our guidance and our plans from our committees at the end of the school year, but I wanted to bring some of these back because obviously I know we have some new families and new staff members that are listening today, but also this is the time where they start to become even more important, where we all start to plan and think about our return and what it's going to look like. And so I wanted to remind you of some of these, and I also wanted to give you a precursor that we do have some upcoming information that we'll be sending out in a variety of different venues to allow you to really see what these look like prior to students returning to campus. So we will be having all students do screenings at home. We'll give the directions and information to our families for that. Our employees screen themselves at home and fill out a Google form before coming to work, and all of our employees go through a temperature check every single day. Our students, based on new guidance, will not have to do the temperature check at school, but we do ask parents as part of their screening to ensure that students do not come to campus with any illnesses, symptoms, or fever. We are requiring masks K6 and for all staff. One question that I've gotten is, if it's only strongly recommended for K2, why is Encinitas saying it's required? And obviously we don't want it to be just the minimum requirements. When it's strongly recommended, it's very important. And we do know that it's one of the best research-based practices that we could use to keep students and staff safe. So we are implementing the mandatory K6 mask. Our health office, we have this year staffed our health offices with more hours so that they are on campus while students are in school. So we have adjusted the coverage there. We have policies and procedures for when either a student or staff member becomes ill, and this is a very clear decision tree that says specifically what happens to exclude a person. We know a safety precaution that must be followed by everyone is not having anyone who's ill on campus. Hand washing and sanitizing protocols, obviously we are implementing before lunch, after lunch, before any kind of activity that would be sharing of materials or any reasons why we would have students in contact with any kind of space. We have sinks in all of our classrooms. We also have hand sanitizer in all of our classrooms. We have them located in the front of the school or in high traffic areas. So we want to continue to follow those, and we'll be sharing that information with students when they arrive back on campus and go through the schedules for that. Restroom protocols, limiting the number of students in restrooms, as well as the disinfecting protocols for that. Pickup procedures, just both even pickup and drop-off procedures will be a little bit different in that we want to spread out the number of students and make sure everybody's distance. And then child nutrition services, it will be a grab and go type of environment. There's no salad bars. And there's definitely a way that we're doing lunches so that students are spread apart, so that those lines have some distancing in them to make that as safe as possible. And then obviously our students who with special needs or in special populations, making sure that we are addressing any kind of protective equipment that might be needed, any kind of special apparatus for classrooms that might have more adults on campus. We've put in some additional plexiglass and other situations to help support the return. And then thinking about physical distancing, we know that, again, some of the most important things we could do is keep space between individuals. And in classrooms, that looks in a few different ways. First of all, having the hybrid model allows for fewer students, anywhere from 9 students in a or B model to up to 16 at our largest classrooms. That allows for quite a bit more spacing between students. So how things are placed in the classroom, always having the teacher or staff 6 feet from the student desk is an important arrangement. We also have, there should be no sharing of materials in school. So students having their own supplies, keeping their own materials at their desk, taking home any of their own items that might need to be cleaned at home. And then obviously we're doing our sanitation every day at school as well. Outdoor spaces and ventilation. First, we have installed the highest MERV 13 filters on all of our campuses, hospital grade, because we know ventilation is critical. And then we are looking to use outdoor spaces. The recommendations currently are that students are outside off and on throughout the day, and then when they're inside, it's obviously a ventilated location with few students. So we will be using our beautiful areas outside for different times during the day, making sure that hallways and that kind of thing are limited in the number of students, and that they're one-way hallways, or if there's enough space that they're single file, because we know gatherings of students is not something that's recommended. Our library and media will no longer be areas where we can house groups of kids, because we don't want the mixing of cohort groups. So stable groups, individual classrooms staying together. Our lunch distribution and tables, we are limiting to 3 people per table, and that is a kind of a zigzag pattern so that there's no face-to-face, and allows the most spacing. It does mean we're going to be doing increased numbers of lunches to accommodate, but we feel that that's the safest way to do that, because that is a time where students won't be wearing masks because they are at lunch. Our playground and restrooms, the playgrounds, first of all, are sectioned off so that students will be playing with their class, their group only, just to make sure that we have limited numbers of contacts between students. Restrooms, I mentioned before, the capacity limits. For an office, I mentioned in a previous video that our offices are open and we welcome families or individuals to make appointments, but even our staff members, we ask that we limit the number of people in the office to keep any area that would, in the past, might have been a place where people would congregate. We want to make sure that we don't have people congregating, so families can call the office or make an appointment. Our staff workrooms are limited in the number of people, and again, we won't be having visitors on campus or volunteers, so that is limited to only staff members and keeping the numbers based on the capacity that's posted. And then our ingress and egress, coming to school and leaving school, schedules and systems that will allow for the least amount of students at a time to be coming through the gate, so that there is a clear flow of students and not a backlog in any way. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and she's going to share about the hybrid model.
Thank you, Andre. So our Learning and Instruction Subcommittee did a lot of work looking at a variety of models and options before landing on the specific hybrid model that we are reminding you of today. We do want you to know that our committee did explore AM and PM options, 2 days in a row options, 10 days on, 10 days off in the classrooms. And we kept coming back to a few important ideas for our team. We know that in-person instruction is the most important thing for our students, and our teachers do best with in-person instruction. And we wanted to have an opportunity for students to interact regularly with each other and with their teacher, and then to have opportunities to return to independent work. So, in our current hybrid model, what we have is an A B structure that is best designed to meet all the students' needs. If a student is an A student, they will attend in person instruction at their school on Mondays and Wednesdays. If they're a B student, they will attend in person instruction at school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And all students will work through distance learning on their opposite days and on Friday mornings. We want to remind you that Friday does continue to be our minimum days for our schools. And what this structure allows is a safer routine. Classrooms will be cleaned and disinfected in between these cohorts, the A and the B cohort days. It allows for smaller class sizes. We've split the class in half to be an A or a B day, and that allows for even smaller groups and in-person instruction and one-on-one support from the teachers when the students are present. And it gives the teachers an opportunity to explain the work in person before the students go home and do the work independently on their off days from school. And then students can return back to school with questions and clarifications needed for the teachers. So they don't have to wait extended periods of time to get feedback, but every other day they are back in school, able to receive their direct instruction and to get their questions answered by their teacher. So we want to make sure that you know that one of the things our principals have been working really hard on is forming the best possible structures for these A and B cohorts. And our principals are trying to meet every possible request known to man, but there are three key priorities that they have made their decisions based on. First and foremost, we look at special needs from our students and their learning plan. So any special needs were driven first for an A or a B decision. And then we want you to know that we have made sure that siblings are on the same day, either an A day or a B day, so that families will be able to attend school on the same day. And for any child who is in a combination classroom, our principals have worked to balance the combination class. So if it's a 4-5 combo, the fourth graders would be on one day and the fifth graders would be on another day. And that allows the students and the teachers to better meet their learning needs. So these are the priorities our principals worked with, and they did their best to accommodate any other learning needs. We know that families right now are sharing childcare supports and really working on your family structures. And we know that you're anxious to learn what your AB structure will look like, and that is coming soon. And finally, we wanted to share a little bit about the journey we've been on. We know that you've been with us since our emergency distance learning in the springtime and our new distance learning that had a lot more structure and longer school days that we're in right now. And when we go into hybrid, we're going to make another transition. When your students come to us for their in-person schoolwork, they will still participate in a daily Zoom call each morning with the whole class so that the A and the B students will see each other, attendance will be taken, and they'll continue to connect with students regardless of whether they're an A or a B day child. But when they're in person, students will get that one-on-one support, small group and class instruction. They'll be able to do things like have CGI math lessons using manipulatives, their own, not shared. They will participate in one live enrichment lesson each day in class that they're on campus, and they will have limited digital curriculum use. We're really going to limit the iPad need on the in-person days. However, when students go back to distance learning, they will rely more on their iPad as one of the options for what they do in distance learning. So when a child is at home on their off days, they will participate in a daily Zoom call with the whole class. They will be able to finish work assigned by the teacher during on-campus days. And that work could be print work, reading from an actual book, work that they were able to carry home with them from school. And it may also be tasks on the iPad, such as our iReady MyPath or our ST Math. These are a lot of our digital programs, personalized learning for students based on their level. So it's a good opportunity for students to advance at their own level and speed during their digital pathways, and then come back to school with any questions that they have. Our students will also be able to view and complete recorded enrichment lessons on their days home.
I want to share the timeline of what's next. So on September 1st will be the first day that we are officially off the monitoring list and that schools would be permitted to reopen for students. And then September 4th, we will be sending the AB assignments home. We recognize that that there's very little that can be done with the assignments because of the complexity of how those are selected with the needs for the special education students, our combinations, and our families. So we do ask that you be patient and understand that those are set. The in and out cloud waitlist. What that is we do recognize that some families will want to choose to continue full distance learning, and that option will only be offered through our cloud campus at that point. And so we will be opening a wait list to allow for families that are interested in moving that direction to do that. And then for families who are currently in cloud campus who now want to be able to return to campus in the hybrid model based on current context, we'll have a wait list going the other way. And I say wait list, our goal would be to address all of our families as best as possible, but each of these directions will be determined by the numbers of either spots that we have in the regular classroom back at the school site or the number of spots that are currently open in cloud campus. So we will be working carefully and thoughtfully to try to address those needs. In September, I do want you to know that we are doing our slow gradual return to school. We will have our small groups starting to attend for in-person learning for special education in some capacities. We'll have some of our services for therapies that have been permitted, and our individual assessments, both for English language learners as well as special education assessments that need to be done in person. And distance learning continues. Our distance learning will continue right up into the day we start hybrid. And then our hybrid start date will be September 21st. This allows us the transition time that we had talked about previously, so that our families, once you get your AB schedule, you will have time to adjust any childcare needs. You'll be able to be ready with what might need to happen in your family to make that work. So that will begin on September 21st. And then I do want you to know that consistently we are and will continue to monitor public health. We will make decisions based on public health recommendations for future phases and policies and procedures, including updated guidance, how it would be transferred into the school setting. So that's our current timeline. I do also want you to know that our complete plan with very specific information about each of the parts of the school day will be coming out to you in the Encinitas School Reopening Plan. We will continue to revise and update that as guidance changes or is needed, and that will be coming to all families. And lastly, I do want to always remind you, we have on our website not only the current communications, but all of our past communications. So previous information about our reopening committees, previous information about our reopening plans. And I do want you to know there's also FAQs that have been updated, as well as a kind of visual representation of the hybrid model that was shared in June as well. So those are all updated on our website. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.